Set us up here. Hi, everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock. We're going to jump right in here. It's just a little after 2 o'clock, and really excited today. This is an episode of Wealth Protector TV, and I'm your host of Wealth Protector TV. I also am a co-founder of Giant Jacks Media. We have Giant TV, and Wealth Protector TV is all about asset protection, estate planning, business planning, or Giant TV. More episodes there about sales and marketing and branding to help build out your business. And really excited for Brad Barth here, my colleague at Barth Calderon, where I oversee development there. Brad is one of our expert attorneys in asset protection, estate planning, business planning, is in high demand for his talks across the country to a ton of incredible groups, including Vistage International, the Young Presidents Organization, and just a ton of others. And today we're talking about maintenance, asset protection, Brad, kind of a lot of things related to that. And I want to jump right into it. If you could start first, Brad, by talking a little bit about how you define asset protection, and then we're going to get into the maintenance and some other privacy issues related to that.
Great. Thanks, Paul. And once again, thank you for inviting me to be your guest speaker, Paul. I always appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience. So what is asset protection in a nutshell? And then I do have what I would call a generic definition, and then I have what I call my definition. Which I think has been developed over 20 years of practice in this area. So I think the general definition of asset protection is creating barriers between assets and liabilities. As I always like to say, that everybody, whether you're a business owner or an individual, you have assets, but you also have various sources of liability, from everything from running a business, having employees, putting product stream of commerce, driving your car, things that your kids do, things that your dog does. You all have liability. So I think the most generic definition of what is asset protection is, how do we create a barrier or separation between your assets and sources of liability? That's basically the separation.
And I've heard you talk before offline about your liability footprint, and you and I both have a gaggle of kids, and so we have that as part of our footprint. Others maybe don't. We wish we didn't.
Right. And so now how do I define it? Now, I think that you take that basic premise that you try to isolate and insulate assets and liabilities from each other. But what I like to say is that it's designing your personal finances in a way which gives you the greatest leverage to negotiate a fast and favorable settlement. And to me, that's truly what it is. I think there's a big misconception out there in the marketplace that you do some type of asset protection planning and it's secret and no one knows about it, and then you can kind of just put care to the wind, and you're not going to be held accountable or responsible for your actions. That is completely false. Really, what it's designed to do is that and with proper insurances, of course, in place, it's designed that if you do wind up in a liability lawsuit situation, that the structure helps you to negotiate from a position of strength, so you can get out of that litigation as quickly and as favorably as possible. After all, Paul, if 90, 95, 98% of all litigation settles, why not take advantage of the tools that give you the best negotiating opportunities in that settlement? Right?
Yeah, because
to me, that's what it's all about.
Right, because you get calls, Brad. I know you say this all the time of, something's already happened. There's a lawsuit, there's liability, and somebody says, "Hey, Brad, I need protection." Right. That happens a lot, right?
Right. As I say, if I had a nickel for every time.
You'd be on your yacht right now doing the show.
Yeah, on my yacht. So, but it's the nature of the practice, and I think it's also a matter of human nature. A lot of people, they have, well, it won't happen to me syndrome, right? And then, it's all of us, and people don't like spending money on lawyers unnecessarily, dentists unnecessarily, and auto mechanics unnecessarily. So really, until there's pain in your jaw or your car is breaking down, only then will you actually go to the mechanic to try to get that thing fixed. I think it's just human nature. And then lawyers were no different. I don't, I don't have people lining up, out of my door, how can I pay the attorney to help me design my structure? But
Right.
I'll tell you what, Paul, that there's a huge difference between having plans in advance from a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. And I'll give you again a very simple analogy, because I think these things ring true when people understand it. They get it, and it's very simple. Paul, you and I would never get into our car, drive from point A to point B without some form of auto insurance.
Right.
Because although it may not happen, there's always that possibility that there may be a car accident. And now, if there's a car accident, you don't want to be in a position of losing everything. You're going to lose your house, you're going to lose your brokerage account, your retirement plan, everything you worked for. So what you've done is you basically try to mitigate those damages by getting an auto insurance policy.
Right.
And so if there is a liability, you can kind of hand it over to somebody else to mitigate, and you have the funds necessary to pay for those anticipated costs. That's what asset protection is all about. It's all about creating structures to basically mitigate those damages. But Paul, just like the auto insurance, you got to have the things in place before the need arises.
Right.
You can't be on the 405, clip the motorcyclist, and then call your auto insurance policies. Oh, I need to buy some auto insurance. I just had a car accident.
Right.
It's a pre-existing condition. It's too late.
Right.
That's what we're talking about when people call me, oh, Brad, remember that motorcyclist on the 405, that example you gave? Well, guess what?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and now it's not that we can't do anything, Paul. It's just that it becomes a lot more difficult, and it's not nearly as effective as it had been had you done it beforehand. That's all.
Yeah, when you mention legal entities, which is a good segue
Right.
into talking about maintenance, because again, being around you and working with you, I know that creating legal entities, the right structures
Right.
for houses and rental properties and
Yep.
businesses is a big part of what you do, and it's got to
Yep.
be done right.
Yep.
So, um, so tell me, you know, how, when it comes to the entity itself, how do those things get penetrated if there
Hmm.
is a problem? And maybe
Hmm.
you could point out some of the maintenance issues that arise
Okay.
where it allows people to get in there. And then what is the maintenance involved in these?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll start off with the ideas of a thing called an alter ego theory. And that's
Hmm.
and a lot of people are familiar with that, or you've heard the term piercing the corporate veil. Okay,
Right.
it doesn't just apply to corporations, it applies to LLCs and other entities and even types of trusts. So the whole principle behind limited liability is that you have a separate entity saying that I am going to engage. I acknowledge, Paul, that there's risk involved in this activity. Again, employees, products, professional negligence, whatever. You acknowledge that there's liability. So what you say, I want to try to find some way where I can engage in that activity. And if there's a mistake or a problem that arises from the activities of that entity, I'm not personally responsible for it. It's an act of the enterprise. So a very simple example, again, let's go down to a hamburger joint, right? So you're going to sell hamburgers. You're going to be putting food. You're going to have customers. You're going to have people coming onto your premises. And so should somebody get sick eating a hamburger, that's not a Brad problem. That is a Burger Joint Inc. problem. They're not going to
Hmm.
sue me. They're going to sue Burger Joint Inc. Right? That's where my insurance policies are, et cetera. Now, here's the challenge. If I am operating Burger Joint Inc. as it's me, I'm not really distinguishing. Okay, so every time I'm working with clients or vendors or customers, it's always thanks for the activity, thanks for the customer, Brad, as opposed Brad, president of Burger Joint Inc.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not using, so there's I'm not holding myself out in a professional corporate capacity. I'm signing things in my personal name. Well, or I'm using the money of Burger Joint Inc. To pay the mortgage on my house, or I'm using it to pay for a car, or I have a venue, a trade show in Las Vegas, and I take there with the family, and I'm deducting the whole thing, and so what's happening now is I'm commingling the funds of Burger Joint Inc. and Brad. So here again, I'm starting to blur those lines.
You see that a lot, Brad? I mean, do you
Oh
actually see
yeah,
that
oh yeah,
happen on?
and not always, Paul, intentionally. And this, and I use that example about the trade show in Vegas because that's a very common example. Before I carry on with the next items, let me go ahead
Yeah.
and expand upon that. Where you have somebody who goes to Vegas for a trade show. I said they're a family of, say they're a family of four, right? You got your mom, dad, and a couple of kids.
Yeah.
And so the trade show is Friday through Sunday. And so what do? They take the whole family, they go there Thursday through Monday. They want to be stuck in traffic on the 15 back and forth. So they go a day early and they come back a day later. And everything about that trip they write off, including whatever they've done, the meals, etc. The problem here is that they should have only written off the person themselves involved in the trade show, the owner of the company in this
Mm-hmm.
case, and maybe in only a portion of all the other activities for that individual person. Not writing off the wife and the two kids and the what do you call it, the massage that she got and the kids going off to the circus, whatever. They wrote that's an example where it's not so clear, but what they've done there, they've commingled the use of corporate funds for personal benefit.
And you're gonna tell us why that's a bad thing. What will happen?
Absolutely, because that goes back to not respecting that corporate veil. So we talked about once about holding yourself out to the public as an individual, fiddling around with the individual with the money, and then you go back to the formalities, kind of getting to what your point is. Okay, you're not respecting the formalities. Your entity is not in good standing. You're not doing the corporate minutes. You're not doing the manager's resolutions. You're not, basically, as I say, you're not walking like a duck and you're not quacking like a duck.
Right.
Therefore, when Burger Joint Inc. does get sued because of that bad hamburger, I can't hide behind that corporate veil, Paul, because that corporate veil it's so blurred that there's no distinction. It's called an alter ego. When they sue Burger Joint Inc., they wind up suing Brad, the owner, because the way of my activities and the way that the company's been maintained, now there's a personal liability which would have been limited, which would have been separated. So this is why the corporate formalities are important. And back to what you were saying about maintenance fees and things like that. Well, a big part of the maintenance fees as well, you got to keep the companies in good standing. And this is the dangerous part. And I've formed, Paul, as you know, over the years, thousands of companies, thousands of companies, and not only in the state where I practice here in California, but I've also done all over the country for a myriad of reasons. And so what happens is that clients get a little overwhelmed sometimes with the maintenance causes. It's not like you write one check and you're done. There's ongoing costs. You're going to have your primary jurisdiction, maybe your secondary jurisdiction, maybe you're going to have a registered agent in that jurisdiction, and there's all kinds of ongoing and recurring fees. Then you got these commercial solicitors out there that are sending you stuff that look very official, but in fact it's not. It's a solicitation. Then people and they think, oh, it's garbage, and everything winds up in the garbage can.
Brad, is this for corporations, LLCs, and LLCs?
Everything. Basically, you wind up going into a suspended status simply because you're not keeping up with it. The government is saying, Paul, if you want limited liability, I can offer you a corporation, I can offer you an LLC, I can offer you a limited partnership. We're going to give you the legal tools so you can engage in commerce without fear of losing your home, without fear of losing your brokerage account, right? There are legal tools. We want to encourage people to engage in commerce. It's good for the economy. It's good for everything. So the tools are there. But what happens is if you don't keep up those tools, and I'm talking about maintaining your fees, then those all of a sudden it goes into suspended status, and you could actually get forfeited. And then you don't know what's going on, right? And next thing you know, someone sues you, and now you thought you had a corporate veil, and it's gone simply because you didn't keep up the structures.
The maintenance. And Brad, when somebody comes after you, so let's say it's a tenant suing a landlord. I know, you do a ton of talks for apartment associations, San Francisco, Oakland, all over the country. And so you're on the front lines of seeing these tenant lawsuits, and they're just exploding, and it's gotten worse in this financial crisis. But so if there's a lawsuit, tenant is attacking, they a lot of times will have an attorney that's just an attack dog. Are they trying to pick apart these legal structures? I mean, are they looking at them, trying to find holes in them? Is that what's going on?
Absolutely.
They are.
Absolutely. And that's where sometimes my biggest challenge is trying to play that devil's advocate, right? So if we're setting up structures, part of what I'm doing all the time, Paul, I'm saying, okay, if I'm the lawyer on the other side, and I'm looking at the documents that Barth's office is putting together, how am I going to attack this? And that's where you just learn from experience, right? The difference between working with someone that's got over 20 years of experience as opposed to someone that's got 5 years of experience simply just meant, how many scars do you have? How many battles have you been in?
Right.
How many different clients, how many different attacks have you seen? So you know how to address that. Because if you, and that's exactly right. They're always looking for something. And so what we try to do always, I say, take the wind out from under the plaintiff's sails. You simply don't want them to have the energy to be able to go after. So if you're able to foresee that based upon the activities, based upon the structures, you can insulate around that. And that's saved my clients many, many times over the years because you already anticipated what the attacks are going to be, right?
Got it.
I
Got it.
mean, think about it. You're building a castle, right? You're
Right.
building a castle. You know where based upon whatever the landscape, you know they're going to come at you from this direction. So where do you fortify? You fortify in the place where you have the most likely place of attack, right? That's where you fortify your castle. You don't fortify it when you're already surrounded by a mountain range. You fortify it where you have the greatest exposure. And that's, again, you have to be able to see that exposure so you know where to kind of fortify it. I
So
guess that's kind of a good analogy.
when you're handling the maintenance for these legal entities, so someone's setting it up, you're handling the maintenance, you're just, womb to tomb, you're covering everything that needs to be done to make sure that that entity is in good standing.
I would say yes, with the exception of taxes and licensing and things like that. So when
Okay.
and this sometimes it gets, and the clients ask all the time, well, do you file my taxes? And the answer is no. When we're talking about the company that I have is called EMS, Entity Maintenance Services. It's one of the things that we offer our clients. And like you said, womb to tomb is fine. It's a nice way of putting it. But the idea behind it is that we're just paying your compliance fees when they're due via a compliance calendar throughout the course of the year. We pretty much function it on a calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. Regardless of the jurisdiction or
Right.
jurisdictions, we know what the amount is, what needs to be paid, and when it needs to be paid. We just keep the company in good standing. What I don't do, I don't file your taxes. I'm not collecting any taxes on behalf of the company. We're not paying city licensings and business licenses. We are not. EMS is not the operating entity. It is not your CFO. It is not your COO. Really, what we're doing is we're just making sure that that company stays in stays in good standing. Now, and that's what EMS does. And then as a side, as a spin-off, I guess, there's another thing called CALM. And CALM just stands for Client Annual Legal Maintenance. Now, clients themselves have legal maintenance, which is above and beyond entity maintenance. There's certain things that the clients have to do, and that specifically revolves around the areas of minutes, making sure that the assets are properly funded. Like so many of our clients, Paul, may have multiple structures, multiple LLCs, multiple corporations, but they may also have, as part of their business succession, part of their tax planning, part of their estate planning, trusts. Well, you want to make sure that the entities are inside the right trusts. So you want it, so I call that funding. You want to make sure not only are the entities maintained as far as minutes, you also make sure that they're paid up. You also want to make sure that they're in the right spot, right? Because it's very rarely that you create a box that's empty. Typically, something is supposed to go inside that box, and then that box may have to go inside another box, like a trust, as part of the overall estate plan. So CALM is more of a, I would say, a much more higher level than EMS. EMS is just keeping the individual entity in good standing, whereas CALM is a little bit more of a holistic. Let's make sure that everything is in good standing. Let's make sure that it's properly funded. Let's make sure your minutes are kept up to date, and then let's make sure it winds up in the right spot. And that's kind of
Got it.
two spin-offs. I think in together, they really that is more, I think, your womb to tomb, right?
Got it. And when we're doing, you and I have done a lot of workshops together, and something that comes up a lot I've noticed is people ask you about privacy,
Yep.
and they say, I mean, it seems so easy to get information on people today,
Yeah.
what properties they own, their home address,
Yep.
it's like what sort of juice they drink in the morning. It's like nothing's,
Literally.
yeah, literally. So what do you say to people who want to be private and have
Right.
anonymity?
Yeah, now that's a tricky one because as you know, and I think you very correctly articulated it, and nowadays in today's Google economy, it's very difficult to basically go incognito. But there are some things that can be done. And you look at, again, look where are those exposures, right? Where are the vulnerabilities, and what tools do we have to kind of plug those vulnerabilities? And we do have some solutions, and we have a lot of clients who are celebrities. We have a lot of clients that are sports figures, a lot of very, very successful business owners, a lot of real estate and property and landlords, all of which don't want to be have a high public profile, and primarily because the bigger the public profile, the bigger target on your head. So here we
Right.
try to
Right.
find what tools do we have, and we have some, but it makes a difference, Paul, because if things are already out there, right? You're already out there. I said you can't unring the bell, right? If something is
Right.
already out there, all that we can do is basically put some privacy veneers over it, and at least from a scratch the surface Google type of search, that stuff should not come up. But then we have other types of tools where we can basically, you never owned it from inception, from the get-go, and therefore your name doesn't pop up at all. And like there's different levels. Some things that you just have to deal with the cards that you're dealt. And some things you can kind of plan ahead on future acquisitions, plan ahead on creation of new entities. So we do have some very, very powerful and successful options for our clients there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's always eye-opening to me when I hear you talk about this is, asset protection is important. And when you set these things up, it's not set it and forget it.
Right. Right.
And nobody seems to care. If nothing ever happens, who cares? It's
Right.
like if you never have earthquake, who cares if you have earthquake insurance on your house? You
Right.
never need it. It's when something happens, I see
Mhm.
people get their butts handed to them.
Yep.
And so it's not set it and forget it. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, totally. And even our own clients, and even we even counsel our own clients, and it happens to the best of us, all of us. And especially the more comprehensive the plan, again, once you start getting it just as simple as maybe two entities. But if you got two entities set up in two different jurisdictions, well, now you got four different states of registration, you got two registered agents. So just with two entities, Paul, you got six sets of filings coming at you.
Right.
Some people are great for business and they're terrible housekeeping people, right? I don't want to get caught up in, my mother-in-law's like this. Don't get me caught up in the details. I'm a planner, right? I'm a driver. I got the connections. I know the business. Don't bother me with filing the fee.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but you need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. It's got to
so
be done.
it's right. It has to be done. So rather than just saying, don't bother me with it, outsource it. And that's what EMS and Calm is all about. It's about the ability of a business owner to be able to outsource some of these more mundane but necessary components of their structure.
Yeah, love it, Brad. I
Yeah.
mean, it's every time you're on, it's awesome. I feel like it's a master class in
Yeah.
planning here. And
Thanks.
yeah, I know your time is highly valued. So thank you. And I just want to tell everybody, the audience here, that we're streaming live. So this is taking a lot of our content that's been in workshops. We're bringing it to live platform, and going forward, we are going to have Wealth Protector TV and Giant TV every Thursday, a weekly show at 1 p.m. California time. And Brad's going to be on a lot with other guests. And the whole idea behind this is to bring you actionable planning ideas, not only for growing your business on the sales and marketing side, but on the asset protection, estate planning, business planning side. So, Brad, thanks for kicking us off here.
Yep.
And yeah, I know you're going to be back. I know where to find you.
Okay. All right, Paul. Always my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll
Okay.
talk to you soon.
Bye bye.